Hey, good morning, guys. So today I wanted to make a quick video on how to basically get started with Flutter. And I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, then you probably know what Flutter is. It's used for creating mobile apps, websites. Although the website stuff is still under development, but it will also work in the future. It'll also work for desktop applications like in Linux and on Windows. And basically, this tutorial will be straight to the point. But also, it won't be a code long tutorial where basically a lot of the frustrations that I got from the Flutter community when I first started looking at the tutorials is that a lot of them would basically just be like, do what I do, and they would never really tell you, where the information is coming from or how they took the information or what certain things kind of mean. So basically, the goal of this tutorial is basically to kind of teach you how you can use the documentation yourself and go on to learn more advanced topics. So later on we'll do more advanced applications, but I don't plan to do what I do, but just to take a long time and explain things, why we're doing certain things and what those things kind of mean in the context of the operating system or in the context of the Android app or in the context of whatever. So if you're looking for a tutorial where it's just me coding and then you coding on the other screen, and this is definitely not for you. If you're looking to understand what things actually mean, a lot of times people will say things like, oh, just update your variable path, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Why am I updating this thing? That's kind of what I want to touch on every tutorial that I do. So basically this first video will be about just basically installing Flutter on your computer. So we're going to install the Flutter SDK. Now, what the Flutter SDK is basically, you can think of it like a translation software from like Flutter/Dart code into the screen showing up with your app. So without this SDK on your computer, you're not able, Flutter code means nothing, right? So you need something to translate Flutter code into an actual app. Now, I'm using a Linux system, so I'm going to click here. If you're using Windows or Mac OS, then click there and follow the instructions. Now, if you're using a Linux system, I'm using a different distribution than most people, I think, but the steps will be exactly the same. So don't be afraid. One thing I do want to point out is that I did notice they've added this Snap Store installation, and I was actually quite excited for it. But this only works if you're using Ubuntu, I think. Actually, Snap works on a lot of distributions nowadays. But I tried the Snap Store version of Flutter, and it didn't work. It gave me a lot of hassles with permissions later on, because it basically takes your Flutter installation and puts it in random places that need special pseudo permissions and stuff like that. And I don't think it's a good solution. It's really easy, but it's not worth the hassle later on. So I suggest we're going to do the install Flutter manually. So ignore this option because it's just not good enough at the moment. I'm sure the Ubuntu people will make it work eventually. They're very smart people, nothing against them, but at the moment it just doesn't work. And today is 2020 August 12th, so maybe in 6 months, maybe by the time you're watching this video, it does work and I'm talking bull crap. So anyways, we'll do it manually, and you'll have more control of it, and you'll learn more things. So the first thing it says is download the installation bundle. So just click on it. And now, if you're not super familiar with Linux, basically what a tar.exe is, it's basically like a zip file. So it's just a bunch of compressed files for you. And we're downloading, again, the Flutter SDK. So we're going to wait for it to finish downloading. Alright, so now that it's done downloading, basically it should show you on your downloads folder, to show you a tar.exe file, and basically this is just basically like a zip file or a 7-zip or whatever. It's just the version for Linux that they use. And if we go back to the instructions, it'll say something like extract the file in the desired location, and then for example cd development tar xf. Now it kind of tells you this, and if you've used Linux for a little bit, then you kind of know what it is. But if this is your first time on Linux, you might be like, what does that even mean? Basically cd development, it's basically saying find a folder that you like, make a new folder there called potato development flutter, whatever you want to call it that, and then extract this file into that folder. That's all it's really saying. So we're going to do it the graphical way, just because why not. Here, I'll delete this because I just did it ahead of time, just because there were some issues with my microphone before. So we're going to go to I went to documents. Now you can pick any folder you want. I suggest you use public folders. What that means is folders like documents, downloads, audios, videos, whatever. I like documents, and just remember what this location is. So we're going to go to create new folder, and I'm going to call it Flutter main folder. You know, something easy to remember. Then we're going to go back to downloads, and we're going to double click on our zip file that we downloaded. Now you got to remember that I'm using a different distribution than you are. You might be using Ubuntu, Mint, Manjaro, whatever you're using. It'll pop up some kind of software that's basically going to extract files. So don't worry too much if it looks different. It's always, Linux is always the same regardless of the distribution system. So anyways, we want to make sure that we extract the main folder, which is called Flutter. So we're going to click on it, or it might look different on you, but just make sure you're extracting the entire thing, like the main folder, or at least all the files in it. We're going to hit extract, and then we're going to browse to the location where we want to download, extract the stuff. And in my case, it was on documents and then Flutter main folder, and we're going to hit extract, and it's going to begin extracting the files. So it'll take a little while to extract the files. And again, the next step, basically, we want to tell our computer, our Linux distribution system, what Flutter is and where it is, right? So that's the next step. Basically, once it's downloaded, you don't need to do anything else, technically. But for practical reasons, we do need to do a few more things. So if we go to Documents, Flutter main folder, and then Flutter, this is your Flutter SDK to some extent. Not really, but we can think of it as our Flutter SDK, let's say. Or basically where all the files and folders are that will basically take Flutter code and translate into, like an Android app or an iOS app. So this is it. This is exactly what we wanted to do. So we should be very happy. The next step, so we pretty much did this part, and it says if you don't want to install fixed version of Linux, blah blah blah, but ignore this. This is the only thing we have to do. So we've done it. Now it says add Flutter tool to your path, right? So what this means basically is, let me show you something. If we open a terminal, just open whatever terminal you use. In your case, most likely it'll just be called terminal. When we type things like sudo, for example, it always knows what it is, right? Like it just magically knows what it is. But if we type Flutter, it'll say command not found. Basically, Linux is telling you, why did you type Flutter? I have no idea what Flutter is, right? And it's your fault because we haven't taught Linux what Flutter is. So when we update the path, it's basically you teaching Linux what Flutter is and where it is and what to do with it. So that's the next step. We're basically going to teach our computer what Flutter is. Let's see. So if we follow this step right here, it's basically a local, temporary solution. Once you log out of your computer, it's just not going to work. So we're going to make sure to go here, update your path. And basically, if you read the instructions, and you should, it says determine the directory where you place the Flutter SDK. So this is where we have it, let's say, right? So we can go and open a console here. Oh, sorry. Documents, I believe. Okay, that's kind of weird. Right, so this is where we extracted the Flutter path, and we're just going to type pwd. And this is basically a command that will tell you the directory, the path towards this folder. And it says, okay, determine the directory plus the Flutter SDK, right? So this is the one, right? Home, for you it'll look different, but basically this is how you get it. So this should look different for you, depending on how you might have named your folder, depending on where you might have chosen to save that folder, and depending on your username. So it says open or create the RC file for your shell. For example, Linux uses the bash shell by default, home bash RC. If you use something else, so this will work for most distributions. Hopefully it works for you, but it should be fine. It says add the following line, change the path, blah 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 blah. So basically it's telling you take this line and paste it here in this file, right? But we need to edit this line first to make sure that it makes sense within the context of our computer. So export path to Flutter Git directory. So this would be this one. Copy, and then we're just gonna replace it carefully replace it. Bam. Okay, so now we have this. We're gonna copy it, and it's basically saying take this line right here and paste it on this file. Now I already have a software called Nano on my computer, and basically what Nano is like Vim. Just make sure you install Nano. If you don't have it, just if you're assuming you're using Ubuntu, sorry, I'm just going to change this to English. I'm not sure why it's, I mean, I know why it's shooting in Chinese because I'm in China. Okay, so make sure you have this installed. Anyways, just make sure it's installed in your computer before you go forward. So we're going to basically follow the instructions here. It says edit this file, right? So we're going to type nano. Don't use sudo. Just use it with no privileges whatsoever. So nano $home /.bash rc, and now this pops up. It's a little bit scary actually, but don't worry about it too much. It's okay, it should be scary. Now copy the path that we created earlier and then just paste it at the very end. Now your what do you call it? Your file might look different, so don't worry too much about it. Just don't think about it too much. It'll just look different. Just put it at the very end. It'll be fine. So now that we've pasted it at the end, we're gonna select this option, write out. And basically, to select that option, you need to basically hit Control O. So click on it and then go Control O, and it's going to say file name to write, home. It's going to give you, are you sure you want to write this file? And then just hit enter for yes, and then it says it wrote 10 lines. And then we are simply going to type Control X to exit, and here's the solution. You see? Control X, and now it ended. And the next thing we're going to do, actually quite simple, we're just going to reboot our system. So just type reboot. It'll work on any Linux distribution, and I will see you in a. All right, so you should be back by now, and I hope, did you reboot your system? I hope you did. And basically, the reason we need to reboot the system is to basically update that file, this file right here, into the system. You can technically log out, but just reboot to be safe, to make sure that everything is going to work, that it's foolproof, kind of thing. Now that it is, we're gonna go back to our terminal, and again, it does, like I use a terminal called console, but most of you will probably use something just called terminal, right? Same thing, don't worry too much about it. And we're just gonna type which Flutter, and it's gonna tell us, look, Flutter is right here. And so give yourself a pat in the back. We are on the process of making this work. Now we go back to the instructions, and it says run Flutter Doctor. Right? So let's run Flutter Doctor, and it's going to give us, so Flutter Doctor is actually a great tool that the Flutter team developed, and like I use it all the time, especially when I'm installing some kind of new package or something and something breaks. I just type Flutter Doctor and it tells me if everything's okay. So do remember this command, Flutter Doctor, because you'll need it a lot of times. So it gives us a bunch of issues. It says Android toolchain, blah blah blah. There's no SDK. There's nothing on your system. There's no Android Studio. There's no devices. So basically, the only thing we have working is the Flutter thing. We got it working. Next, we're gonna go to Android Studio. And we're going to go to download Android Studio. Now, it kind of depends how what operating system you're using, but I find the easiest way to download Android Studio, if it's not on your, I find the easiest way actually is to go to IntelliJ Community Toolbox. I don't know if this is a popular thing amongst the community or if people are going to get upset at this. Sometimes, you know, people who use Linux or do programming, they just get upset at everything. So we're gonna use the toolbox here. It's so convenient. You don't need to worry about anything, and I don't know if it's up to date like to 100%, but it's just easy, and that's what we're kind of going for. And we're gonna go to the Linux tar GZ thing, and we're gonna download it. And basically, what this is, it's basically a like on Windows, it would be the equivalent of using a .exe. Like basically, you're just going to click on it and it's going to work. I think. Let's see. Now we go to downloads, and then we can just click on it. Oh, that didn't work. Cancel. Let's extract this file somewhere again. Extract to, and why not? Let's just extract it to your documents. Just do it to your documents, it doesn't matter. Okay, it should be extracted. Let's go to documents. It says JetBrains Toolbox, click on it. Yes, actually before we do it, just go to properties and then make sure on your permissions it says is executable. Again, it might look different on your distribution, but just make sure that it says is executable, and it will be the same for Ubuntu and whatever. So click on it. What do you think? What do you wish to do? Execute, and should be opening up somewhere. Okay, so it opened up. It says allow sending anonymous. Sure. I mean, I like IntelliJ a lot. They're a really nice company. Accept. And now we're here. I mean, the nice thing about the toolbox is that you can install a bunch of IDEs from them, and it doesn't need any work whatsoever. So we're going to download something called Android Studio by Google. So we can just type, just don't worry too much about it, and click install here. Just click on it. Don't think too much about it. And up here it's going to start saying like, oh, yes, sure, of course I've read it. Up here it's just going to give you like what's happening. So right now it's checking the files and it's downloading. And obviously I'm not going to make you guys watch this entire download. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when I'm done. But just wait for it to finish. Alright, so I just went and got a coffee. And we can see here, Android Studio. Perfect. And the nice thing about this toolbox is, again, we didn't have to do anything. Now, I'm sure someone in the comments will say something like, oh, you know, if you install it from the toolbox, it's like missing one binary line of code, so, you know, your app is going to be like 0.0001%. They're going to say something. It doesn't matter. It's easy. It's meant to get you started on the process. So click on it, and now it's going to start to open. Do we want to send the stats to Google? Sure, why not? Google owns everything anyways. It says Android Setup Wizard. So Android Studio is made to develop Android apps natively. It doesn't work with Flutter out of the box kind of thing. Actually, we should go through this process. So let's hit next. Let's use custom. And I hope you have this installed. Just hit next. And then I like the dark one. Maybe you don't like it. That's fine. You don't have to use it. Just pick the one you like the best. Yeah, and then one Android device. So we're gonna make sure it's like Android SDK. The API. This is basically the OS, the operating system for the Android device here. And just hit next. Sure. And then it's gonna tell you, hey, we're gonna download a bunch of stuff. Are you sure? Hit next. And then it says we've detected you use HAMX. Like I basically have an AMD or Intel CPU, and basically it does some fancy stuff and makes it faster for virtual machines. If you're interested in it, you can click on it. For the sake of this tutorial, it doesn't really matter, unless you're doing basically if you need this kind of stuff, you know how to do it. Don't worry too much about it at first. Just kind of get started with it. Just hit finish. So it's going to start download again. It's going to start downloading the SDK for Android itself. It's going to download a virtual device, so basically like an emulator where we can display our apps as we make it. So again, I'll pause it again and come back to it soon. Just wait for it to finish. There's nothing to do at this point, and everything at this point should have kind of worked. So just wait for it. And again, I'm speeding up the video so you don't have to watch me do this stuff. So just wait. Alright, so it says that it finished, and hopefully nothing looks red, so hit finish. And it says welcome to Android Studio. And before we jump into a new project, we're not going to develop Android apps. Not natively anyways. We're going to develop Flutter apps that turn into Android apps, which by the way are native code. So we're going to go to configure, and then we're going to go to plugins, and then it's going to take a little while because it's the first time that it didn't. So we're going to type Flutter, and we're going to hit install, and then it says blah blah blah, hit yes. It says it requires Flutter, also requires Dart, so hit install. And it says we need to restart your IDE. IDE is basically the Android Studio. So hit yes, restart, yes. Okay, and before we go any further, we're gonna go back to our terminal, and we're gonna see if Flutter Doctor, what it says, right? So always remember this command. This command will save your life. Let's see if we've done a good job. Let's see if anything's missing. Okay, it says Android licenses not accepted. To resolve this issue, run Flutter Doctor. So we're gonna go Flutter Doctor Android licenses. Okay. Okay, sure, yes. Just accept everything. Who knows what this says? I don't really know, and I'm definitely not gonna read it. Okay, so we solved one issue. Let's go back to Flutter Doctor again and see what it says. It says Android Studio Flutter plugin not installed. This adds Flutter specific. Okay, that's kind of weird. Okay, let's go to start a new Flutter project. You know what? Actually, before we go forward, why don't we log out? Just log out and log back in, kind of thing. So I'll see you in a. Now, I realized logging out and logging in out of the operating system is not the cleanest solution towards fixing issues, but it does work, and it's going to save you a lot of time. Just log out and log in if anything happens. So open up Android Studio again, and then just click on Start a new Flutter project, and let's see what happens. We're going to go Flutter application, next. And okay, so this is an interesting issue that it does happen to me quite a bit. It says the Flutter SDK path not given, even though we did it, right? Because I remember, like here, for example, if we type which Flutter, it works. So Android Studio has some issues, so it doesn't really matter. Don't worry too much about it. So Flutter SDK path, it's asking you where it is. We're going to hit the three dots, and because we didn't do the that Snap Store installation, we know exactly where it is. So it's installed in Pope, Documents, Flutter main folder, Flutter, right here, right? So find that Flutter document we downloaded a while back and just hit OK on that, and then boom, it works. Hit next. We don't need to worry about that stuff, because if this is your first Flutter app and you're kind of following a tutorial on how to install it, you definitely don't need this stuff, so don't worry too much about it. Just hit finish, and then it's creating a Flutter project. This should be very exciting because it's your first Flutter project ever. And then cool. So this is also the first time I've opened Android Studio here, so I'm just going to close a bunch of stuff because it's meaningless stuff. Cool. So this is actually the nice thing about Flutter that I like is they kind of give you a working app straight out of the box, and this will work on web, it will work on iOS and everything. So the next step is we're going to find something that says this one, AVD Manager. We're going to click on it. That's weird. I thought we created one. It doesn't matter. Create virtual device, and then this is completely up to you. I'm going to use the Pixel 2, sure, but you can use whatever you want. It's up to your heart's desire kind of thing. We're going to hit next, and then I thought we downloaded this. So anyways, it's asking us, basically we're going to try to create an emulator for our app to run on so we can see it on our computer. We're just going to hit download on the latest one. It doesn't really matter. You can pick whichever you think you want to test. Like whatever you want to do, you can just pick here at this point. So basically it has the option to download RQ, Pi, Oreo. There were some issues here. I forget why they have 2 Oreos, but they do. So again, I'll pause it here because it's 1 gig and it's just going to take a long time. So I'll pause it. Just wait patiently here, and it will work in a second. Alright, so I finished installing this, and this is only the first time we have to do it, so don't worry too much about it. Hit finish, and then select R, next. And then here you can set up like names for it. You can call like Pixel 2, Android, Q, so you know which one it is. And essentially you can have multiple devices and kind of see how your app runs in different resolutions and stuff. So hit finish, and now we have it. We're going to hit play here, launch this AVD in the emulator, and I don't know what that is, but that's running on your computer, and it's basically logging in for the first time, so it's going to take a little while to kind of start. And actually, before we start, we should always do Flutter Doctor. Let's see if everything is up to date. Make sure everything's working. We didn't miss anything. What? I don't know what they're talking about because it's running here. So this might be an issue with something else. Just ignore it for now. Let's see what happens. So now that it popped up here, you can see it like SDK, GPhone, whatever. Just hit play or run. I don't know why I call it play. So now it's running. Gradle task assemble debug. So basically it's building the app to be run on this Android device for the first time. It's basically taking your Flutter code, which is this, right? Taking this code, and basically it's translating it to like proper Android code. So basically, there's always that discussion online about is Flutter native code. Flutter is you can think of it like a translation software from Flutter code into native code. That being said, I mean, no one's going to argue that if you have a very talented native developer, that they'll write better code than Flutter. Like, that's a fact of life, and that's why companies like Google or Facebook will never use solutions like Flutter or React Native. But Flutter is not meant for those companies. Flutter is meant for you, essentially, a small company, a guy or a girl who wants to learn how to develop apps, and you basically don't have enough money to have an iOS team, you don't have enough money to have an Android team, a web team, and you basically want a solution to get started on your projects, to get started on your startup, whatever, and just kind of get something out the door that works really well, and perhaps it's not as efficient or as great as it could be if you wrote on native code, but it just works. And to be honest, like I've tried a few apps with Flutter already, and yes, there are some limitations, especially because Flutter is like 2 years old or 3. So if you try to do like very fancy, like extremely fancy stuff, you're gonna run into some issues. Like you might, I don't mean issues, I mean like you have to like reinvent the wheel a couple times by yourself, right? Where like if you go on native code, someone already has a library that they work for, but again, Flutter is meant to give you an app like quickly and something that's going to work on iOS. And to be honest, you're going to be able to do most apps that you can think of. So I do like Flutter a lot. But it's the discussion: is Flutter as good as native code? Of course not. Facebook will never switch to Flutter. Neither will Google, because they have a lot of money and they can hire the best iOS developers, the best Android developers. But let me ask you a question. Your local pizza shop that needs a website or that needs a quick app to handle deliveries, and they don't want to deal with some of the other apps, they don't have money to hire an iOS developer, an Android developer, and a web developer. They're better off doing something like Flutter, where you code once and it works everywhere. So you can see that it works. Everything looks fine. So this is the end of the tutorial. And basically we have Flutter running on our computer, and it's great. Oh, I know why this isn't working. Let me see something. I'm not entirely sure why it's giving me some issues. Oh, I know why this is. It's because I have so on your computer it should be green. The reason why it's not green on mine is because I'm running 2 versions of Android Studio, and the one from IntelliJ is not being recognized as the main Android Studio. So yours should be working perfectly. And again, here's the evidence kind of thing. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I had there was someone to check a gas leak in my house. That was kind of weird. But yeah, everything should be working now. And actually, just to show you a few things, this emulator is like really cool, because like if you click here, it honestly is like a real phone. Now, something you have to remember is that yes, this is a real phone, but it is running on your computer. So the app, whatever app you do, it might not be as fast as it could be if you actually were to build it. Now, if you wanted to build the app, like this app, we go to Build, Flutter, Build APK, right? Let's do it. So we build the APK, which is basically this one, this app that we have here. So we're going to wait for it to finish building real quick. And this is just an example to kind of show you the final product. So it's going to take a little while, and it shouldn't give you any difficulties. So I'm going to pause the video and just kind of wait for it to finish. There's no point in you watching this. It's basically taking the Flutter code and translating into Android code, if you will. Okay, so now it says that it finished. It says here, it says build app outputs Flutter APK release. So basically we can go to Flutter app. Project lib build. I think it says build, right? Yeah, build app outputs Flutter APK release. So basically, if you take this file and you can send it to your friends, and they can install it on their Android devices, and it's going to work like a real app. And it tends to be very, very, very good in terms of performance. So anyways, I'll make some more videos explaining more complicated things, like how to actually code things, but I kind of thought that making a video on how to like set up the system would be quite essential. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Tell your friends about this video, I guess. Whatever you want, doesn't really matter.